Hello beautiful people, it's me, Sydney. Today we're doing a makeup in history, but I'm not going to be doing my makeup because I cannot do it anymore. I'm sorry. I've literally tried to film this very video like 4 or 5 times. The juggling act of doing the makeup and telling a story while trying to, be informative and entertaining is just not something I can withstand right now with everything else I have going on in my life. Hopefully you guys still like this format of me just being able to talk and tell stories and share information without having to do the makeup aspect of it. My hope is that eventually I can get to a point again in life where it's not as hard. But right now it's hard. It's too much. It's too much. I'm waving the white flag. I can't do it. So instead of makeup and history, we'll just call this History with CydBee, which I think is pretty cute. My friends on TikTok helped me find that name. If you're not following me on TikTok and Instagram, please do that now, or don't be weird. I mean, you don't have to. You can do what you want. It's a free country for now. So for today's video on History with CydBee, we're going to be talking about Fannie Lou Hamer, who is an absolute icon. I don't feel like enough people know who she is or what she did for this country, for everyone. Her life story is so fascinating and so incredible and so brave, and I think it's just such a testament to what it really means to live in the United States. One of the quotes she's most famous for is, "We are sick and tired of being sick and tired." Ain't that the truth? Still, it's never been a great country for everyone, and it's really, really unfair for a lot of people. And so I feel like stories like this, I don't know, give me hope and inspiration that, it's never been great. The world and the news is really bleak right now, and so I hope that everyone is taking care of their mental health and just doing their best not to get too sucked up in all of the chaos and drama, because it is very depressing. I'll say that it is depressing watching the news lately. And speaking of mental health, I do have a sponsor for this video, so let's get into that for a quick second. Did you know anxiety often peaks during springtime? With a change in weather, new routines, longer days, it's very easy to start feeling anxious about not doing enough or being enough. If you've also been feeling this uneasiness, this anxiety, or you just would like some more support for being alive in general and how stressful that is, then my sponsor BetterHelp is here for you. Majority of the members on BetterHelp are there seeking support for anxiety, and 69% of those members reported improved anxiety symptoms with just 6 weeks of therapy on BetterHelp. Super easy to start. You just fill out a questionnaire and then you'll be matched with a therapist within a couple days. They carefully vet all of the therapists, and there's also a really great customer support system in case you have any questions. You can easily switch therapists at any time if it's not the right fit at no extra cost. With BetterHelp, you can get the tools to manage your anxiety and start enjoying your life again, just in time for summer. Click the link in my description box or go to betterhelp.com/Sydney to get 10% off your first month. All right, let's get into this story. Fannie Lou Hamer was born Fannie Lou Townsend on October 6th, 1917, in a town called Montgomery County, Mississippi. She was the youngest of 20 children, and her parents, Ella and James Townsend, owned a really big plantation of their own where they had livestock, they had food, they had everything that you could need and want. And then they had 20 kids to, tend to the land and take care of everything, which I think back in those days, everyone had a ton of kids, so it was pretty normal, but Fannie was the youngest. What was abnormal was that a black family was doing so well, and this made the local racists very, very jealous, and they began antagonizing and harassing the family, vandalizing the farm, killing their livestock, poisoning their crops, just doing all kinds of awful things simply because they were jealous that, a black family was doing so well in Mississippi. I'm not so familiar with the southern states. Like, I've not traveled to many of them myself, but I do feel like Mississippi was one of the worst ones. I don't know if that's still the case, but it definitely felt like it used to be. Someone in the comments let me know, is Mississippi still terrible or what? When Fannie was 2 years old, the family had to leave their plantation and move due to all the harassment that they were experiencing, and they ended up at another plantation where the owner hired her parents and her siblings as sharecroppers. And sharecropping, if you're unfamiliar with the term, is a very predatory practice that was really popularized after the abolition of slavery, when slaves still didn't have really any money or anywhere to go. Sharecropping was the option to work for another farmer, and as payment you would get the tools and food necessary to do the work. So you were tending to the farm, and like as a payment you would get a shovel, right? Or they would rent out the shovel, but they would say, oh, we'll just take that out of your pay. And essentially these people were just never getting paid because everything that they were working was going towards the equipment, which is nuts. It really pisses me off, actually. talking about it. Some of these people would also collect debts, which is interesting. So not only were they not being paid for their labor, they were acquiring debts for using the equipment or for living on the land or for eating the food that they were tending to. Of course, many of these landowners were taking advantage of the fact that the people working for them were poor and uneducated, and they would keep them that way. You know, they wouldn't allow their children to go to school. The children would often have to work as well in order for the family to pay back debts, and so they were never allowed to get an education in order to build a better life. So Fannie's family went from living on this plantation where they were completely self-sustaining to now living on another plantation where they were sharecroppers, and they had to live in a tiny 3-bedroom shack. 22 people, mind you. It's 20 kids plus the parents. 22 people living in a 3-bedroom shack with no bathroom, and sometimes Fannie had no warm food or clothes. At the age of 6, Fannie began working on the plantation as well in order to get food and candy. The owner of the plantation saw that, you know, she wasn't working. He was trying to get as many of them to work and tend his crops as possible. And so he went to Fannie, a 6-year-old, and offered her candy to, you know, start working. And so she goes back to her parents and she's like, hey, homeboy, the boss said that if I start working as well, then he'll take me to the store to get candy. Can I start working? And so her parents, at this point, I imagine, those poor people, were just like, yeah, sure. Sure. Everyone else is working. Why not? Sure. The owner of the plantation was called a Mr. Marlowe, I guess. You, Mr. Marlowe. You, dude. What a douche. Sorry. That was a tangent. Fannie began picking 30 pounds of cotton a week, and in exchange, Mr. Marlowe would take her to the store to get candy or whatever she wanted. She was also allowed to attend a sharecropping school once a week where she learned to read and write, which was rare for most of the children living on the farmer in a sharecropping situation. They didn't get to read and write, so Fannie was very fortunate that she got to learn. She got to learn. And you know what? You need to stop taking that for granted, okay? The fact that we can read and write is a blessing and a gift. We should, I'm chill. Moving on. So they continued this arrangement, her picking cotton and him taking her to the store to get candy, up until the age where she was 12, and each week she would just begin picking more and more cotton. She went from picking 30 pounds of cotton at the age of 6 to picking 100 pounds of cotton at the age of 12. She also, at the age of 12, had to quit school in order to fully help her family pay off the debts that they had now attributed from working for Mr. Marlowe's bitch ass. Fannie grew confused as she got older as to why it was that her family was in so much debt, even though they were working constantly. She was working constantly. She couldn't understand, like, why is Mr. Marlowe so happy and gleeful and we're like not, you know? And I can't figure it out. Mr. Marlowe. The only thing her adolescent mind could conclude was the reason that they were not well was because they were black. She can't figure it out. She's like, is the reason our life sucks so much because we're black? Like, what? What is happening? She goes to her mom and she goes, hey mom, how come we're not white? Hey mom, I have a question. Her mom responds to the question by saying, because you're not white, you're black, and you should be proud of being black. There's nothing wrong with being black. It's a beautiful thing, because mom's an icon. She could see that her daughter was struggling with this idea, and so she brought her a black doll and encouraged her to play with a black doll and, you know, just to remind her that she was beautiful and just really instilling confidence in her, which is the most important thing I feel that you can do, especially for young women. Like, tell your daughters that they're beautiful. Let them know that they are perfect. I mean, you know, don't gas them up in a way that's unhelpful for later in life, but we need to instill confidence in young girls, and especially young black girls. I think my mother did a great job with that, so shout out to her. So Fannie realized that the condition that her family was in wasn't because they were black, it's because they were poor. She saw a lot of the people growing up around her dying as a you know, result of not having the things that they needed to live, basic necessities. And so at the age of 13, she says that she made a vow to God that if she lives to be an adult, she would dedicate her life to fighting for the poor and helping improve the lives of poor people, which is so noble and so sweet, and God, what an icon. As Fannie grew into being an adult, she continued working at the same plantation as a sharecropper that she had grew up on. She also really made an effort to practice reading and writing and improving her literacy. So Fannie continued her literacy and reading through Bible study and attending church, and she would read at church, and she developed a way to interpret the scriptures so that people felt inspired. People loved listening to her speak. Her boss, Mr. Marlowe's bitch ass, learned of her literacy and decided to give her a job as a bookkeeper for the farm. In 1945, at the age of 27, Fannie gets married to a man named Harry Hamer. That's where she gets the name Fannie Lou Hamer. And the two of them met because they both worked on the same farm together, and they, fell in love and got married, and they would remain married for the next 18 years. So it was real love. Not that fake love. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the people who were living on the farm were not living in the best conditions. They suffered from malnutrition. The lack of sanitation caused a lot of illnesses, and Fannie also developed her own illness. She had a uterine tumor. A tumor in her uterus, I guess. Not having a bathroom and having to go to the restroom wherever is definitely going to cause... Have you ever had a UTI? That is one of the worst experiences I've ever had, and you can get those from literally just not being able to wipe properly. I'm not sure if that causes a tumor, but it could. I don't know. I hate Mr. Marlowe. In 1961, Fannie was able to get a surgery to have the tumor removed. However, the doctors who performed the surgery to remove the tumor also decided that they would just get rid of her uterus altogether. And this was a form of forced sterilization that many Black women faced during this time. It was so common amongst the Black community that they called it a Mississippi appendectomy, which is so infuriating. It's really, really upsetting. And Fannie never got to have children. She and her husband really wanted to have kids, but because she was sterilized against her will, they never got the opportunity to do so. Sorry, that makes me really upset. That makes me really mad, but okay, moving on. Fannie and her husband Perry still really wanted to have a family, and so they adopted 2 girls, and she would also adopt more children throughout her life as well, because she was an angel. An angel. In 1962, when Fannie was 45, a group called the SNCC came to speak at her church about the right to vote, the constitutional right to vote. The SNCC stands for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and their mission was to go to rural parts of the country and teach people about the right to vote and how much voting could have an impact on their life and, their circumstances. Many people, like Fannie and her family living in these rural parts of the country, had no concept at all whatsoever about how voting worked and how it could improve their lives and change the law. And Fannie thought that this was remarkable. Her mind was completely blown at this idea. She was like, wait a second. You mean to tell me we don't have to be living like this? What do you mean? She was like, hell yeah, I need to know more about that. So Fannie decides to get more involved in the SNCC, and she attends a conference, and she says attending this conference was the first time that she had ever been in really close proximity with white people. It was the first time she ever sat next to a white person, and she was so nervous. This woman is 45 years old. Imagine how segregated it has to be that you've never even sat next to a white person before. Her whole life, she just witnessed white people being terrible. So I imagine being next to one in a calm setting might be a little like, oh, what's about to happen, bro? You good? When the racist white people in Mississippi heard about what the SNCC was doing, they, of course, started doing what they did best, which is bullying and harassing and, being terrible, awful people and trying to squash any developments that they were making. However, the seed was already planted, and Fannie, who already had the attention of her church, started preaching and talking about the right to vote. On August 31st, 1962, Fannie made a plan to go and register to vote. She traveled 26 miles from the farm where she was living to the city capital in order to register to vote. And when she got back, everyone on the farm was in a frenzy. Her whole family was so worried because apparently bitch-ass Mr. Marlowe had been looking for her and he was upset. So finally he finds her and he approaches her and he's like, "Did you register to vote today?" And she's like, "Damn right." She probably didn't say it like that, but she's like, "Yes, I did." And he's like, "Well, I need you to go back up there. I need you to travel 26 miles back there to withdraw your registration because Mississippi is not ready for this." To which she responds, "Well, I didn't do it for you, so I'm definitely not going to withdraw it for you. The fuck?" He responds by saying, "Well, if you don't go and withdraw it, then you're going to have to leave. I'm going to kick you out. And honestly, if you go and withdraw it, when you get back, I'll decide if I'll even let you stay because..." So if she goes to withdraw it, you're still going to make her leave? You're a bitch, Mr. Marlowe. Go fuck yourself, Mr. Marlowe. Fannie knows for certain that she's not going to go and withdraw her registration, so she packs up her family and they leave the farm. The farm she'd spent her entire life on, by the way, which was probably very hurtful. But the conviction to not do what some bitch ass is saying you should do, respect. Nothing but respect. Fannie leaves the farm to go and stay with some friends, and the friend's house gets harassed. They experience gunshots, people coming out and just harassing her for what? What were they harassing her for? Honestly, Fannie did not allow the harassment that she was experiencing from bitch-ass Mr. Marlowe and other racist people in the town to deter her from her mission. She made a vow to God, okay? She was going to do whatever it took to make her life and the lives of other poor people better, which is so fucking noble. I digress. In 1963, she attended a workshop that was meant to teach people how to educate others on how to register to vote and also how to pass the literacy test. And as she was leaving this workshop, she was arrested by the police and taken into custody. The police were harassing her the entire time that she was arrested, and in the car they were berating her and asking her questions, and when she would try to answer, they would tell her to shut up, and just being really, really awful and terrible. And when they got to the jail, she was thrown into a jail cell, and she could hear other women in the jail being beaten. And after a while, the police officers come to her cell and they bring another black prisoner, I think it was a male prisoner, and they forced the male prisoner to beat Fannie. And then once he was done, then they forced another male prisoner to come in and beat her. And then once he was done, then the police officer started beating her. Fannie suffered a blood clot in her eye and permanent kidney damage from the beatings. And she knew that this was all happening to her because she was advocating so much to help people vote, to teach people how to vote. And this was not uncommon. Again, like, this was a very common thing that was happening. Some people even lost their lives due to just trying to help, just trying to give people their rights. Makes me so mad. None of this deterred Fannie. Even after receiving the beating, even after seeing her friends, black and white, be killed due to this cause, she did not stop. And she decided, rather than going the state route, that they would go the federal route. She partnered with other members in the SNCC to create the MFDP, which was the Mississippi Federal Democratic Party. MFDP, Mississippi Federal Democratic Party. And they began traveling to other states. They attended the Democratic National Convention in 1964, where Fannie spoke at the convention and basically said, like, listen, all we're trying to do is register to vote. We're literally just trying to register to vote and teach other people how to vote. What, isn't this the land of the free? Why is that such a big problem? Why are we being killed in Mississippi just for trying to register to vote?
She walked in there with her purse on her arms, and I'm going to say she was only 5'4", but she was walking tall that day.
Is this America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off of the hook because our lives be threatened daily?
President Lyndon B. Johnson did all that he could to make sure that it wasn't seen. They went to emergency commercials. He didn't know that night it was aired anyway.
Her speech at the convention was very eye-opening and moving. Again, she was an amazing speaker, and many people were like, hold up, what is going on in Mississippi? So they start investigating it, where, of course, the Mississippi officials were like, no, nonsense. Everything is fine here. Everyone is fine. Everyone can register. It's fine. Just lying. After speaking at the convention and getting a lot of attention and it going really well, Fannie decides that she's going to run for Congress because she's an icon, and she creates a whole campaign. Of course, her name on the entry ballot wasn't accepted by other Mississippi officials, so this SNCC and the MFDP decided to hold their own vote where they included all of the candidates, because Fannie didn't believe in racism. She famously said that to hate you doesn't make me any better than you. So why would I do that? Why would I do that? I'm an icon, you're not, is what she said. The results of their independent vote were crazy. The other person running for Congress only got like 40 votes, and Fannie got like 40,000 votes. So the people really loved her, and why wouldn't they? In 1965, the following year, Fannie decided to take the results of their independent vote to Washington to fight for her congressional seat, because she won, and she knew she would win, but the racism in Mississippi kept her from even participating. So she decided she was just going straight to the source, go straight to Washington, and tell them what was up. Throughout this process, she began receiving a lot of press. She was invited to come onto talk shows and to speak about her experience, and people really liked her because she was so charming. She had a great presence, and they liked what she had to say.
And the only way these people can vote is on a national election. Well, how can they say they're fighting for the right for people to vote when we're not allowed to vote in the state of Mississippi? You got a good point there.
Fannie traveled to various universities and institutions to speak about her cause, and she noticed that she was experiencing a bit of discrimination from other Black Americans because of her appearance and her accent. She had a very thick Southern accent. She was looked down at by other Black Americans, which was new. That was a new thing for her. She was not formally educated, so that gave them, I feel like Black Americans in the North had a different discrimination that they were facing. They were trying to be too perfect, which I feel like that's still kind of a problem today. God bless. Fannie, being a bit rough around the edges, was they discriminated against her for that, which is crazy. This did not deter her from speaking. She continued to speak, and she had a great ability to evoke emotions out of people, which she was very effective. I also think the ability to speak to people in different tones is really important. Not everyone wants to hear the uppity, super educational way of conveying a message, right? She had a very authentic and genuine way of what she was saying, even though it wasn't grammatically correct. Okay, fine, whatever. Do you understand what she's saying or no? Thanks. And much of her efforts were contributed to the signing of the Voting Rights Act in 1965. By 1969, Fannie was, fairly famous. She had a bit of notoriety, and many people were influencing her to maybe move to the North. However, she decided that she wasn't going to do that. She wanted to stay in Mississippi, and though maybe conditions there were worse for Black folks, they weren't actually better in Chicago or Harlem or these other places where Black Americans were going for a better life. She viewed it as almost the same, and why would I abandon, the people who need to live here?
I've been very concerned with young Black people in Mississippi, and there's no need of getting an education, running to some other place. Fight and make it right here. I'd take a chance in Mississippi quicker than I would Chicago, because we at least know where we are here. But they got some of the same hypocrites up there. It's just like these white racists down here.
Which is so noble and so sweet. She's the best. Fannie's the best. We love you, Fannie. We love you, Fannie Lou Hamer. Woo! In 1969, Fannie founded the Freedom Farm Cooperative, which was a farm that she bought with the goal to teach people how to grow their own food rather than accepting or depending on welfare, that the state was now giving to poor people. The Freedom Farm provided food, clothing, shelter. Sometimes she would lend people money. She would give people jobs. She really just wanted to help everyone that she could. She would often give more than she actually had because she never wanted to turn away someone in need, which is so sweet. What a sweetie. Along with doing her best to help everyone that she could, she remained a target for racially motivated attacks, of course, which I imagine was really, really stressful. And so it just makes me really upset. What an angel. What a sweet angel. She did not deserve to be. For what? For helping? For trying to make the lives of other humans better? But I imagine it was really, really stressful. And in January of 1972, she was hospitalized for a nervous breakdown and exhaustion. And this would continue happening. In 1974, she was hospitalized again for a nervous breakdown. And then in 1976, she also had to close down the farm due to financial reasons. They just weren't making enough money, probably due to the fact that she was sick so much. She was not doing well. In 1977, at the age of 59, Fannie does pass away due to complications with breast cancer. She also had diabetes and hypertension, and I'm sure the nervous breakdowns and constant threats to her life didn't help. She was buried on her farm, Freedom Farm. Fannie's legacy was that she always believed in the good in all people, in Black Americans and white Americans. She knew that deep down there were really good people in this country and that conditions would improve, because people wanted them to, and there were people who in their hearts knew what was happening wasn't right and wanted to do something to change it. She also would say that she didn't blame the white Americans for not acting out of fear, because she remembered when she too was also afraid, and it's scary. It is scary. But imagine having so much grace while being tormented every single day. What a God. One angel. She encouraged others to love and support one another and never to forget the people who were left behind due to just not having the opportunity. And not just Black Americans, everyone who was disenfranchised due to not having money, to being poor. And many people believe that this is what her life and legacy was, what motivated Martin Luther King's Poor People's Campaign, which at the end of his life, which is the reason I think he died. He was organizing not just for civil rights for Black Americans, but for the civil liberties and justice of all of the poor and disenfranchised people in the country. And I think that's why he was taken out. fortune here for me. So that's the story of Fannie Lou Hamer and her legacy. God rest her soul. I pray that she is at peace, and I hope that this motivates other people to just not be afraid. Like, she was living in the worst conditions and circumstances and treated terribly and awfully, and she didn't let that deter her from trying to do what was right and making the world a better place for everyone, which I think is so legendary. What an icon. Ugh. Anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video and this format. Fingers crossed, because this is the way we're going to have to do it from now on. Honestly, I had a great time just being able to sit and talk with you guys rather than trying to focus on not making my makeup look trash as well. So yeah, this was kind of fun. I hope that you guys enjoyed it as well. I love you so much, and I'll see you in my next one.